We're going to be talking about anxiety disorders, OCD, and trauma-related disorders. So the way today's going to play out, I am going to talk about some mood disorders. Then you guys are going to go watch a TED Talk, which actually is pretty interesting. I know some TED Talks can get boring. This is a woman diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and she's going to talk about her experiences and what it's like. I don't know what that dinging was. Something just dinged. Sorry, guys, something just dinged, and I'm not sure what it is. I only have like 25 tabs open. Okay. Oh, well, it is what it is. I can't figure it out. So we're going to do lecture, video, lecture, video, lecture, video. So let's get started. Okay, bipolar disorder. So this, you're alternating between depression and mania. And we used to refer to it as manic depression. We got rid of that, I believe, in the DSM-4, maybe 4TR. It is absolutely gone in the DSM-5. So we refer to it as bipolar disorder, not manic depression. But if you hear the term manic depression, that's what they're talking about. So what is it? Well, there are two types of bipolar disorder, bipolar 1, bipolar 2. Most often we're talking about bipolar 1. And so that's what we're going to spend most of our time on. Bipolar 1 says you are going to go, and I'm going to give you the criteria for a manic disorder, that you spend some of your time in a manic episode and some of your time in a depressive episode. Now, it doesn't mean you're always in one or the other. You can have some regular time, but you do have these swings. Now, the swings can be months and months and even a year in between the swings. That's possible. Rapid cycling means you go more quickly back and forth. She will talk about that in the video. So here's what we mean by mania. So these are the criteria that are in the DSM for the manic state. So this is, you have to have 3 or more of these, and this is what the DSM does. It'll give you criteria and tell you how many. And it has to be different than your normal behavior. So these are excessive. Inflated self-esteem or grandiosity. So you may be a little arrogant all the time, but this is above that. This is, you basically think you are a Happy Meal with extra fries and a shake. You are all that in a bag of chips and a soda. You are the top of the top. Everything you do is better than anybody else. And this is this really inflated idea. And it's over the top because it's during a manic state. Decreased need for sleep. This is probably one of the reasons people get diagnosed with this. This is one of the conditions that causes them to go get help. The depressive state might also, but if you're getting treatment for the manic state, if you're going in and it's a manic state that pushed you into going to get diagnosed, decreased need for sleep. We are not talking, oh, gee, I can sleep on 1 hour of sleep a night. We're talking people don't sleep for 3, 4, 5 days and they are fine. In fact, they seem to have even more energy than the people around them. They don't need sleep. There's a clip of Charlie Sheen. We don't have time for it today when I budgeted everything. Charlie Sheen, the rumor is, besides his whole HIV diagnosis, if you remember, and you guys are getting kind of young to remember, but Charlie Sheen was on 2.5 Men, all that stuff. He went through a spot, and it's when he lost his job there, and Ashton Kutcher came in and took over. He was partying. He's always been a big guy to do like a lot of like hiring hookers, and he's been open about that. But he went on like this wild binge. He had 2 women living with him. One was a porn star and one was some other, I don't know. And they were up for like 4 days. They were doing all types of drugs. And he still had custody over his children over Denise Richards, which makes me wonder how messed up Denise Richards really is. But anyway, so he was open about this. He's always been open. A lot of people thought he was in a manic state, and there's interviews out there with him. And that's when he was like, I'm not bipolar, I'm bi-winning. And he said that he had tiger blood and that he could do things nobody else could do because he was special. That's that grandiosity. But he also talked about the fact they were up for days. And in that, you also saw him be very talkative. He was going from one idea to another. He was talk. He wouldn't shut up. He talked faster than Framstead in a lecture. He talked faster than Hank Green in a crash course, which is really fast. So that's the nice thing. If you watch crash courses on YouTube, you can always put them at 0.75 speed, which I do sometimes. So flight of ideas. We also saw this with Charlie Sheen. And flight of ideas is you jump from one idea to another. And so you're talking about one thing, then all of a sudden you're talking about another thing. Then all of a sudden you're talking about another thing. So you're flying to different ideas. You might go back to the original idea, but you're all over the place. Distractibility, you have real trouble focusing. Increased goal, and I don't like that they put this together. This is one of my criticisms of the DSM, and I don't have all that many. Increased in goal-directed activity or psychomotor agitation. I don't know why they put these together. So goal-directed activity. You might decide you're going to renovate your whole house and you start ripping out cabinets and you're up for days doing it and you get it done. You might start working out a whole lot and do it excessively. Whatever you're going to do, maybe it's your job and maybe all of a sudden you're doing everybody else's work because you're so full of energy. So it can be goal-directed. Psychomotor agitation, you can't sit still. I don't know why these two are put together. Increased involvement in activities that might have painful consequences. Here's the problem. A lot of people in a manic state do not look at consequences. They are living in the moment. So people will go and spend tens of thousands of dollars because they're pumped up. They feel like they are undefeatable and that everything's going to be okay. So they spend all this money. Yep. It says 3 or more. But a lot of people will have more than 3. But the minimum you have to have is 3. And so you go out and you might have, like Charlie Sheen, do a whole bunch of drugs because you feel invincible. You might go and do crime sprees. You might go make bad decisions personally. So you are not thinking about consequences. It's about immediate gratification. Freud would say your id was overactive at this point. And then, is that it? Yeah, that's it. Okay. This alternates with major depression. So major depressive episode, and we'll see this again later in the presentation, major depressive episode, you have to have 5 or more of these. Depressed mood for most of the day. So you're depressed, you're not happy. We call this anhedonia. You can't find pleasure in anything. So if you think of something you really enjoy doing, it might be music, it might be dancing, it might be video games, it might be crafting, whatever you really enjoy doing, spending time with your friends, but you find no pleasure in anything that you're doing. Nothing makes you happy. Significant weight loss or weight gain. Some people, when they are depressed, don't eat and they lose significant weight. They really have trouble eating. They don't feel hungry. All that anxiety is overacting in them. Other people comfort eat and they eat really bad food and they put on weight because they're not moving around a lot. Same thing with sleeping. Some people with depression can't sleep. The worry about things, the depression, the mood gets to them. They can't sleep. They wake up worrying about things. They just cannot get in a place to sleep. And when they do sleep, they wake up. Other people, when they're depressed, all they want to do is sleep. They want to shut out the world. They don't want to interact. All they want to do is sleep. Now, I did ask somebody who is a therapist, I said, can you be like, because I had a student ask me, can you sometimes have hypersomnia and sometimes have insomnia? And they said yes. Some people in depression can alternate between the two, but it's just that there's a change in sleep. They said most of the time people kind of pick a lane and stick to it, but you can do either extreme and fluctuate. Psychomotor agitation or retardation, you either can't sit still, or some people are just, when they're depressed, they just have no energy to move, period. They make very little extra movements. Fatigue or loss of energy. This is not being tired, guys. Fatigue is more intense. You have no energy to do anything. And it doesn't seem to matter how much sleep you get. You don't have energy to do anything. All you just want to do is lay around, even if you're not sleeping. It's not necessarily being tired, it's having no energy. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt. And so you feel worthless. You feel like it doesn't matter if I'm here. Or you have a lot of guilt, or you have a lot of guilt that either really you shouldn't be feeling guilty for this, it's not your fault. Yep, I see in just a second. Or you have excessive guilt. Maybe, yeah, you screwed up and you should feel a little guilty, but you feel excessive guilt. Yes, Chantel. Most of the time for bipolar, people will eventually see a therapist. This is the episode. Remember, bipolar is mania and a major depressive episode. We will get to major depression, which is going to be the exact same thing. So we're going to get to major depression. That gives a time limit on it, which is the slight difference. But this, with bipolar, you're alternating between depression and mania. So for both of these, people usually do see a therapist because it's pretty extreme. So I should say usually, but there are a lot of people who don't because culturally they don't believe in it, whatever. Diminished ability to think or concentrate. Now, this one is a little close to my heart. My daughter still has anxiety, but she's also gone through times of being diagnosed with depression in her life. We actually had a suicide attempt, that type of thing, back when she was in high school. She did where she was trying to go to school, but a lot of times she would stay home and we worked. She had a 504 plan. They would send work home. We'd work with it. And I would watch her sit and try and do her work, especially because she also had the anxiety that was like, I have to get A's. And she would try to do her work. And she would sit with her books. She's a big note taker. She like color codes notes, does all that. She would try and do work. She would sit by a computer trying to type something, and she could not get it done. She would cry because she wanted to get it done so bad, and she could not focus. Now, I'll tell you, we have students like this, and we will get notes sometimes. Hey, this is what's happening with the student. Please send work home. Hopefully they'll be back shortly. And then I have teachers who will be complaining about the kids not doing the work. Well, they're sitting at home. Why can't they just do their work? What I'm talking about now is the decreased ability to think part of the depression. And so you can have this with all different disorders, but I'm talking about it as a characteristic of depression because that's what I dealt with my daughter. So, but we have students and we get notes like this. And then teachers are like, well, they're sitting at home all day. Why can't they do their homework? And when they say it to me, they're in for it. I am a little confrontational. Will tell people what I think about things that are important to me. As I get older, I spend a lot more time of just whatever. I type responses to people on different things all the time and never send them because I don't want to get into it because I'm not going to change their mind. On this, I will jump on you and I will explain what I witnessed with my daughter. If you have a student who's going through depression, there is a good chance they want to do the work and they can't concentrate. They are trying. So until you've dealt with depression, don't you come telling me how they should or shouldn't be. That's my little soapbox. And then you might see suicidal ideation. They think about suicide. So that's bipolar 1. You've got mania and you've got depression. Bipolar 2, which I don't think I'll ask you about, I'm just mentioning it so that we're thorough. This, you have a past history of depression, and then you have a manic state, but it's not a full-on manic state. It is what we call hypomania. Hypo means below, hyper means above. It's not the excessiveness that we see in regular mania, but they might be able to have extra energy. They might be a little bit more, I got to get things done. But it's not to the extent of the mania. And in psychothymic disorder, most people never get treated for this. This is kind of like bipolar light. The depression doesn't go into full-on depression, and the mania doesn't go into full-on mania. And most people, because it's not so severe, just deal with it, and it's just who they feel they are. Okay. We're going to do depressive disorders, then you guys are going to go watch the bipolar clip. So that's because this is very overlapping what we just did. So for depressive disorders, you have to have, without it being because of a medical condition, because some of these things can be caused because of medication you're on for other things. So it can't be because of a medication or drugs that you're taking. It has to be 2 or more weeks for it to be major depression, major depressive disorder. So over a 2-week period or more, and you have to have 5, just like before, but one of them has to be in the first 2. So the depressed mood, and I'm going to go through this quickly because we've already done it. Marked diminished, increased, and so lack of pleasure and stuff. So you have to have at least one of these. Now, I would find it hard to diagnose you with depression if you didn't have the first one. That seems kind of, yes, Fatima, or did you not mean to raise your hand? I see it's down already. Okay. So you have to have at least one of these 2, and then 4 more things. And it's the same ones we just saw. So this has to be for major depression, 2 or more weeks of this, but for major depression, depressive disorder, we don't have the mania. You just have this depression. And it's the same stuff. Okay, so Chantel just asked, can you gain weight and lose the same amount of weight? And can you go back and forth? You can, just like what I asked, and I should have probably said that, just like with the sleeping, where some people want to sleep all the time, and then it's more common to pick a lane to be where you're going to eat all junk food all the time, to comfort eat, or to not eat. But yes, there are some people who will do both, but it's not that you're necessarily trying to lose the weight. It just happens because now you can't eat because of your depression. But it is more common to pick a lane and stay there. Okay. So other things that are included in this section of the DSM-5. Disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. This is explosive teenagers, basically. Temper tantrums, it's a childhood disorder. Temper tantrums, but not just like violent. Anger outbursts beyond belief and way over the top for what is called for at that point. Very irritable, okay? And I've had a couple students diagnosed with this. Basically, it's like get out of their way if they, sorry, Abby Rusha can't come to class today, so she was giving me a remind message. Okay, this is what we saw, major depressive disorder, and some people get it once and they're done. Some people get it and it comes and goes, but they don't have the mania, and that's recurrent. Persistent depressive disorder. Most people do not get treated for this or diagnosed with it. We also call it dysthymia. I call it the Eeyore disorder. You just never get really happy about anything. You're not in the major depression. You're not suicidal. You're not dealing with tons of insomnia. You're just don't get happy about things. Other people go around and they laugh and you're just like, nah, whatever. That's dysthymia, and it has to last for at least 2 years. And most people just say, oh, well, I'm just not a happy person. Okay, so now what I want you guys to do is, and it is in Google Classroom, go down and watch this #2 assignment for quarter 4, TEDx Terry Talks Laura Bain. And she is she has bipolar and she's talking about her experience. This will take you until, let's get back together at 10:15. So 10:15 we'll get back together because, oh wait, no, it shouldn't take you. I'm sorry. Wait, yeah, that's just over 20 minutes. So yeah, so 10:15 we'll get back together. Because we also have our bathroom break at 10 for you guys. We're going to start in about 2 minutes, guys. They kind of TED Talk sells some of their rights, like the TED Talk, but so TED will still promote it, but it's not. It's like a franchise type thing, I guess. I've been showing it for a number of years. Let's see. Nine. Yeah. But I still really like it because she makes it personable to me instead of, oh, all right, guys. So I think I was just explaining, and I realized I was unmuted, that I like that one because I feel like she makes it personal. You don't think people who have this disorder are freaks or whatever. She's a college student. She's done her stuff. And this is just a part of who she is. It's not who she is. It's not she is bipolar with, she is a person who has bipolar. And I think that she really kind of tells you how it has affected her negatively, but also makes it real and makes it realize that people are successful. All right, anxiety disorders. So persistent distressing anxiety. Remember we talked yesterday that it has to cause personal distress or maladaptive behaviors that reduce anxiety. So it's going to interfere with your life. So some types. Panic disorder. Panic disorder is you have panic attacks. Some people know why they have their panic attacks, but oftentimes with panic disorder, people don't know why. They just come out of nowhere, which is scarier. I'm going to try and keep this a little short. I had a really good friend number of years ago. She's moved and anyway, she had panic attack. We were out at the mall when the mall used to have stores, and we were at Claire's, which is enough to cause a panic attack in anyone because it's overcrowded. And I'm always so afraid that I'm going to bump into someone's going to fall in my pocket and they're going to think I stole it because so many people steal from Claire's. At least we used to. So not me, but people I know. I honestly never stole from Claire's. I did, but I didn't mean we. I meant we as a collective, not me. I am not a thief. Okay. But all of a sudden we're walking around Claire's and I can see her like in distress. So we go out and she's like, yeah, her heart had started to race. You touched her and she was cold, but she was kind of sweaty. She was, what they call clammy. Technically, Amaya, what we say now, Amaya asked if it's possible to have an anxiety attack and a panic attack. You can have bouts of anxiety, but if it gets to the attack stage, normally they refer to it as a panic attack. But you can have high points of anxiety where you don't have some of these physical symptoms. But what a lot of people refer to as an anxiety attack, technically is a panic attack. I hope that answered your question. Yes, Kayla.
Oh, not really a fun fact, but it is a fact. Sometimes when you have panic attacks, you're especially like in your spinal area, you can like seize a little bit, and it's a lot of times, like my sister, she has a panic disorder, and what happens when she gets really bad anxiety is she has a seizure, and it's like it can cause like small bouts of memory loss. It can make her forget where she is. It's scary to watch.
I can imagine. She's got it pretty extreme then.
Yeah, panic disorders and anxiety runs pretty heavily in my family. I think it goes all the way back to like my great 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 grandmother, specifically the females in my family, me included. Actually, we all have a little bit of something something. Love
I feel
genealogy.
you.
Um, but it manifests so differently in every single person. Like I sometimes will get like the little shakes and the like mini seizures. I don't really know what they're called, but
Okay.
she gets them incredibly severe. She'll be shaking for hours.
Wow.
It's a lot,
Yeah.
and a lot of times I feel as though panic attacks are kind of like not generalized, but I feel like they're not categorized properly, because sometimes people like hyperventilate a little bit. They'll start experiencing a little bit of anxiety and they'll equate that to having a panic attack. But it's very different. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying anyone's anxiety is invalid by all means. Like
No.
everyone's valid. It's just that a panic attack is definitely different from a little bit of hyperventilation and a tiny bit of anxiety. And I just wanted to say that because this is a
Very
subject
valid
that
point.
I know a lot about and I'm pretty passionate about it.
Very valid points. Yep. Yeah, Kayla's exactly right. And I think she maybe did a better job than I did, Maya, in kind of explaining that. So yeah, sometimes when you have high points of anxiety, you can get yourself so your breathing is off and your heart starts to feel like it's racing. But a panic attack is more intense than that. Now, Kayla's sister has it extremely intensely. My friend who was diagnosed with panic disorder and panic attacks, what happened with her was her heart started to race. She had the sweats. She was hyperventilating. That was her first one. And what happened was we got her out into the hallway and then people gathered around and then it became even worse. And she basically passed out because she was so intense. It became overwhelming. She never had the seizing up, but yeah, that does happen. And with her, what happened was she had no cause for these. It came out of nowhere. She started to be afraid to leave the house because she was afraid she'd have one again and that everybody would be watching her and she'd be embarrassed. And so she was getting treatment and the doctor said, I'm worried about agoraphobia, which we'll talk about in a second. I need you to leave the house at least every other day. And so I was, go with a safe person, to help you. And I was one of her safe people. So I still remember we were going through the McDonald's drive-through on 4 Mile and Douglas. And if you've ever been to that one, when you go through, you've got the building on one side of you and then a hill on the other side of you. So we're going through the drive-through, we're waiting. The person in front of us, I think, was getting like 30 fries because it seemed to be taking forever. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, I can see a change in her. And I don't even know exactly what it was, but I'm like, are you okay? And she's like, I'm like, obviously you're not. She's like, we can't get out. We're trapped because there was someone in front of us, someone in back of us, the building to the left and the hill to the right. And she ended up almost like convincing herself and developing this panic attack because she had the anxiety. And with that one, because it didn't go so extreme, that might have been more of just an anxiety attack. It didn't go as extreme as she had them. But she started to really do stuff, and we did breathing techniques that she had learned from her therapist, did some of that. And luckily, the person got their fries or whatever they were getting, and we got through. Now, one of my students said, well, she could have just gotten out of the car and climbed up the hill if she had to. Neither of us at that point were thinking that way. You are right, but logic is not always high during these times. And so that was my personal experience with someone with that. My personal experience is this one, generalized anxiety disorder. This is the one I've diagnosed with. So I'll try and keep this little brief so you guys, because I'm trying to finish so you guys have time to watch the video at the end. It was my son, who is now 25, was in preschool. So he was either 3 or 4. So it was over 20 years ago. And I always knew that I worried a lot more than a lot of people. And I always seemed to be more anxious about stuff. This is the sign to me that pushed it over the edge. So one of this woman I became friends with, her kid was in preschool. She would pick up my son, take him to the daycare or, whatever, the babysitter, because my ex-husband and I both worked. And so I'm talking to her later in the day because we're friends, and she said, "Oh yeah, so Billy," I don't even remember if that was the kid's name. "Billy came over today." And I stopped listening to her because my anxiety took me down this road. And I started thinking, why didn't she invite my kid over? She invited someone else. Now, it's not like she had a play date with 10 other kids and my kid. I was like, why is my kid excluded? And I went down this path. My kid is never going to have friends. My kid's going to be isolated. My kid will probably end up becoming depressed and maybe even drop out of school. My kid is going to, and I honestly, in the middle of the night, a couple days later, because I didn't sleep for like 3 nights, I was anxious about this. I was stressed about his future. I actually was thinking of him living in a shack in the woods like the Unabomber, because I thought he's going to be so excluded, he's going to be living by himself. Now, logically, I knew that was stupid. And I don't use the term stupid often, but it was. My kid didn't get excluded from a birthday party. And then even it doesn't require where I went with it. She invited one kid over, and it wasn't my kid. But I had his whole future mapped out where he was going to be excluded and isolated. And I knew it was wrong, but my anxiety would not stop it. I could not, I could talk myself logically. I could say, Dawn, come on, blah, 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 blah. It wouldn't stop. I was still going there. And if you don't have anxiety, that might not click with you. Well, you just told yourself to stop. It wouldn't stop. So I had my psych degree. I'm like, I bet I have generalized anxiety disorder. Went to my doctor, said, I think I have generalized anxiety disorder. She said, Dawn, you know enough not to diagnose yourself. I said, well, then give it to me. So she gave me the screening. She, was asking me questions, did all this stuff. She got done. She goes, I think you have generalized anxiety. I didn't even let her finish. But so since that time, I have been on medication. I used to be on SSRIs, and we'll talk about this with treatment either next Tuesday or when we come back from break. I think bio stuff is after break. I've been on, it was SSRIs. We changed it a few years ago because as my hormones and everything changed, it wasn't working the same. But my serotonin levels are not the same. I will worry about things. Now, the medicine helps. The medicine will help me get through stuff. The medicine makes it so I don't spend 3 days thinking that my kid's going to be isolated in a shack in the woods. But I still worry about things more than a lot of people. I also went to therapy to change some of my cognition, and I don't always follow exactly what I used to do, 15 years ago. But I have tools. It does not debilitate me for the most part like it used to. But people with anxiety disorders, just like we're going to see with OCD, we know it makes no sense. You can't tell us that doesn't make sense because we already know that. We just can't stop it. So I'm going to have you guys watch this quick little video. I'm going to put the link. We're going to watch it just in here for us. You guys are just going to watch this. It's less than 2 minutes. And this is one of the best things I've ever seen about generalized anxiety disorder. So come back to me as soon as you're done. So they think they fixed my speaker thing, but I have to reconnect to the cord. So they think that that'll work, but I haven't tried it out yet. So we're just going to go with it here first. And then they start talking about medicine. Okay, so that's exactly how I feel though. It's that what they call is free floating anxiety. My anxiety is sitting there waiting for something to attach to. So, for example, last block, we got this email from Miss Barncard about bathrooms being unlocked, people leaving bathrooms unlocked. And I had gone to the bathroom during last block, and I'm like, oh my God, is this about me? Did I not? Gloria was right there. I didn't have to lock the bathroom. But right away, my anxiety is looking for something to be anxious about, looking for a place to go. Okay. So then we have phobias. A phobia is more than a fear. A phobia is going to be persistent, so it's not going to go away. It's not just a one-time thing. Unrealistic, irrational. So it's excessive. It can be basically two things qualified as a phobia. Either it's excessive. Yes, being afraid of poisonous snakes is healthy. Being so afraid of poisonous snakes that you go into the display at the zoo where they're behind glass and you start freaking out and you have to leave, that might be a phobia. Okay, so you have ones that are excessive and they're irrational and unrealistic in the fact that they're so excessive. You also can have people who have phobias of things that are not dangerous. Maury used to do a lot of things on this. People who are afraid of cotton balls, people who are afraid of mustard, of pickles. That is a phobia because it's so irrational. And usually people who have phobias of things like that are over the top with it. We will talk about how to treat it. I threw this in there because I never think to mention it. Oh, thank you, Claudia. I'm not presenting to you. Thank you. I'm presenting to the 3 people in my classroom. Sorry, I turned off the video part and then, okay. So phobia is persistent, unrealistic, irrational. You guys heard me, you just didn't see the video. So they used to say that you had to recognize that it was over the top, that it was excessive or unreasonable. They've taken that away now, and I'm glad, because most people with phobias will recognize it, just like I recognize my anxiety is over the top. But some people don't, and I don't think that's enough to take away the fact that you have a phobia. And so they did get rid of that recently, I think the DSM-5. So examples, we have specific phobias. You're afraid of snakes, you're afraid of heights, you're afraid of something specific. Agoraphobia. Now, agoraphobia technically means fear of wide open spaces. But what it basically boils down to is people who are afraid to leave the home. Most often this comes from panic attacks, but it can be other things. Social anxiety disorder, it used to be called social phobia, social anxiety disorder. Now this can be, you're afraid of generally everything, of being around people, because it's based in a fear of being judged and a fear of coming up short. So it can be just in general, you don't like being around people, you have anxiety about doing things around people. It can also be about doing specific things. The most common being public speaking. People are afraid to give speeches in public. That's a social phobia or social anxiety disorder. I'll tell you really, really quick. Yeah, and I agree with you, Maya. She said she doesn't like being around too many people. We were just having this discussion. At my home, I don't like being around a ton of people. And I don't like it. I can handle it. And people are like, you're a teacher. It's different. When I'm at my job, it's different. But out in public, I don't like being somewhere, and this is not agoraphobia, but I'm okay with having a lot of people around me if I know that I can get away. I know I can go somewhere away from the group to kind of catch myself. And so I don't like big family gatherings, extended family gatherings, when they're in like a smaller home, because there's nowhere to go. You're like on top of each other. You can only go to the bathroom so many times before people start to talk. And so I don't like that. I like it much better when it's warmer out. You can do stuff outside. Because you can escape more easily. So I agree with you. And so I don't think I truly have social anxiety disorder. It just stresses me out. It's not over that. Now, they did move some things. They used to have OCD and PTSD used to be part of anxiety disorders. And I think you can understand why. With the DSM-5, they decided to give them their own category. So we now have their own category. So let's talk about OCD. This is not people who just like things neat. You will be watching Howie Mandel at the end of class. Please pay attention to the fact it's not just things being neat. There's an obsession about getting infected, getting dirty. Many, many, many people with OCD, it is not about neatness, and we'll talk about that. So what it boils down to, obsessions and compulsions. Obsessions are thoughts that won't go away. For example, it might be about getting contaminated. It might be about dirt and germs. It also might be, there was a show, I think it was a True Life OCD one. The girl, she was like college age. She was afraid her mom was going to die. That was her obsession. She couldn't stop that thought. She kept being afraid her mom was going to die. Her mom wasn't sick, but she had that obsessive thought. It might be things have to be a certain way. So you have this obsessive thought or thoughts. The thought is there. The thought will cause you anxiety. The thought is usually not a positive thought. And then you have the compulsions. These are the behaviors. And the only way to get rid of some of the anxiety from the obsession is to do the compulsion. Now, sometimes there is an obvious connection. If your obsessive thought is about germs and contamination and you're constantly washing, and people can be as bad as taking like hours-long showers, scrubbing with bleach, scrubbing with that like Comet stuff that you scrub kitchen sinks with and stuff. The ironic thing is people often end up getting infected because they've scrubbed so much. But you can see the connection there. But with this girl who her obsessive thought was about her mom dying, she had to have everything lined up. She had to organize everything on her bathroom counter. She had to have the lights a certain way. She had to do a few other things. And it was all, that was the only way to lessen the anxiety. She knew there was no connection. People with OCD usually know. Howie Mandel, when you watch it, knows he's over the top, but he can't stop it, just like I can't stop my anxiety. So what you need to really know about obsessive compulsive is you have the obsession and you have the compulsion. The obsession is the thought, the compulsion is the action. So under this category, we have obsessive compulsive disorders. We also have body dysmorphic disorders. These are people who are like on botched, who have had tons of plastic surgeries. Michael Jackson. What they usually do is they don't see their body the same as other people do. They obsess about things that are wrong with their body. And so they're constantly trying to fix it. And you can see then how it fits into the OCD category. It's not OCD, but it is lumped with that because it's this obsessive thought about something being wrong with your body that's not wrong. Hoarding disorder, and a lot of people say, how can hoarders have OCD? They like collect and they're messy and they're, if you've seen a hoarder's house, if you've watched the show ever, how can someone with OCD be that? Here's the thing. If you've ever actually watched some of those shows, those people aren't living that way because they're messy. Those people are living that way because they can't get rid of things. They have an obsession that they need to keep these things, or they need to order these things, or they need, okay, example, I don't watch the show very often, but one of the shows I saw, and in my brain, I'm like, oh yeah, I can use that for class. The woman was helping her clean out stuff, and she had this big box of 15 to 20 washed out spaghetti sauce jars. And she said to her, why do you have all these? She said, well, I have a recipe that calls for this size jar. It wasn't a spaghetti recipe, but it was a recipe that called for the spaghetti sauce jar. She said, I have that recipe. And she said, okay, that explains one, maybe even two. You have 15 or 20. She said, yes, but what if one breaks? Then I don't have one. Well, if you have two, you have one. We could keep one backup, and that's what they ended up doing, was negotiating down to keeping two. But she had that obsessive thought that if one breaks, if one other one breaks, she needed to have this. Now, the ironic part was she had never made the recipe. She had had it for like over 10 years and never made the recipe. But in the hoarder, cleaner outer person almost made her get rid of it for that, but she let her keep it. But that is why it's OCD. They feel like they need. My neighbor, her mom was a hoarder. And the pictures that we saw of this house, she never got rid of anything because she kept thinking maybe one day I'll need it, or she felt a connection to it, this obsessive connection of the memories. Okay, these two are kind of related. This is the hair, you pull out your hair, kleptomania. Some people do it, like actually hair off their part of their head. Some people pull eyelashes or eyebrows. I've had both types in my classes. It's kind of an obsessive behavior, a compulsive behavior you're doing. Okay. Oh, and then skin picking. Same type of thing. People pick at their skins just like pulling their hair. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So, trauma and stressor-related disorders. So this used to be under anxiety disorders. They've moved it. This is pretty simple. I think it's 2 slides. You had a traumatic or stressful event, and that might trip up a lot of us. These people with these related disorders can't get over it, can't move on. So one is reactive attachment disorder. And I actually have a friend who adopted 2 children from Russia a number of years ago. I believe at least the son, possibly the daughter, has reactive attachment disorder. And I actually know that the son does because he was diagnosed with it. They were found, well, the daughter was found, she's 2 years older, wandering the streets of Russia. They brought her back home. She was maybe 2.5, because her brother was still less than a year old. Brought her home. The dad had been long gone. The mom was at least an alcoholic, maybe a drug addict. The girl was eating dog food, because that's all she could reach. She was basically trying to survive on her own. They took them and put them in a Russian orphanage. Russian orphanages historically have not been the best place to house children. She did a little bit better in the orphanage than he did because she was able to be mobile. She was 2, 3, probably 3 years old. He was stuck in a crib, and he was almost a year old. They were there for, I believe, 2 years by the time the adoption went through. He was stuck in a crib almost that whole time. They had really, really tall sides. He was not able to get out. Very little contact, basically only what was necessary for survival for them. He did not learn how to bond with anybody. He didn't have it with his mother's home. He didn't have it at the orphanage. He still has issues bonding. He doesn't get empathy. He doesn't get feeling for other people. He doesn't get, you hate to say it, and I won't say it to her, but I don't think he truly understands love, because he didn't learn it in his first 4 years of life. He didn't get it. Now they've tried and they've gone to therapy and he's gotten better, but there's still a component that's missing. They're actually looking at possibly antisocial personality disorder, which we'll talk about Monday. And I see a lot of that in him. And that's very much related. A lot of people with reactive attachment disorder can go on and develop that. So this is that lack of bonding, usually because of extreme cases in early childhood. Post-traumatic stress disorder, there's a slide on it. It's our last slide in just a second. Acute stress disorder, this is like one-time extreme stress disorder. You're overreacting to the stress. but it lasts just a short time. It's usually one incident lasting a short time. Adjustment disorders, you don't adjust to what's happening in your life. You have a death in the family. You just won't get over that death. You just keep thinking about it. You won't move on. You're stuck there. You have another you're stuck there. So PTSD, this would be the one I would think they would ask you about. So a lot of us know about PTSD. It happens a lot of times after people have been in extreme accidents, natural disasters like hurricanes, volcanoes, violent sexual assault, witnessing or being victims of other violent crimes, terrorist attacks. We said natural disasters, war, airplane crashes are actually another one that is common after. So you have some type of truly traumatic event. And after that, you have nightmares, extreme, very vivid nightmares. You have memories that you can't get over. The memories just won't go away. You might withdraw from being around people. You might not trust people. You might not want to be around people. It's just causing you too much stress. Jumpy anxiety. In a lot of these cases, especially if you've been attacked or if you were at war, your survival might depend on you being able to respond, that fight or flight. So you're on the edge constantly waiting for the next attack. You could have numbness of feelings. You, again, lack that connection with people. Insomnia. Sometimes because they're afraid to go to sleep because of their vivid nightmares. The one thing that I must have missed when I was typing, flashbacks. You feel like you're at the event, you're awake, and one of the triggers for that can be fireworks for people who are victims of gun violence. It makes you feel like you're in that event again. You start feeling like that. You might even go back so far into almost visualizing what happened to you if you have an extreme. But they used to say that you had to have a point of being okay, and then it had to come back. They got rid of that a number of years ago now. Now it just has to last 4 or more weeks after the event. You can have a time where you seem to be okay. Some people have things happen to them and everybody's like, look how great they're doing. And then they go back and they start having these events. So that's that. So what you guys are going to do with the rest of the time is watch the Howie Mandel Ed Puzzle. It is 9 minutes, so you have just about enough time. I did really try my hardest. So watch Howie, and I will see you Monday. Reviews tomorrow. Now, if anybody comes to the 10 a.m. review, I am getting my second vaccination at 9:30, so I should be back. But if I'm not here, it means I'm running up here. I'm going to actually try and sneak in like 10 minutes early to my vaccination, so I'm back. But it's just at Festival Hall. They're only supposed to keep you 15 minutes, so I should be back. But if you're coming to the 10 a.m. review, be patient for me. I will hopefully get in there on time, but if not, I am coming. Okay, guys. So watch Howie. For this one. Oh, just a second, I just have to fix this. I made a typo for a student's grade. So for this one's not letting me click the score thing. Oh, it's because you missed a question. I just saw it when we went past. Oh. I think it's because you missed it. Let's see. Because that happened to me as I missed a question. So it wouldn't highlight it. Come on. No, no. Okay, here, question 54. Then it should let you. Okay, this one. Mm-hmm. If I would go there, would delete the answer. Okay, so with this, that's what it gave you. Okay, can you just type, tell me it said service unavailable? I've seen it now, so I will excuse you from that portion of it. Okay, thank you. Okay, guys, we have less than a minute left. You can just leave them out of the bag because I got to wipe them down. So,
Thank you.
yep, you're welcome. Hi, guys. Have a great day. We'll see some of you in review tomorrow. Otherwise, I'll see you Monday. So you got most of it done, Ari? Okay, great.
Have a good one.
Bye, Kayla.
Goodbye.
Bye, Natasha, Nevaeh, Joe.
By Miss F, on the Ed puzzle, I was trying to put he got his hair lasered off, so sorry about that.
Okay, I will look at it. So thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day, Nevaeh. Yeah, the assignment you're doing now is 40 points, and the test was only 60. So it was totally like awesome. I think I kind of just did some estimating, and thinking when you did this morning, you did it. But I will, okay, I will get those answers, and I will probably, since I can do it. If it's not, maybe we can figure out someone else who can do the work on it. To get like another puzzle or something. You're welcome, Marie.